very much.
On that commercial, we but to sell that car. Right, 6 o'clock. All the March 25th. Regular meeting order. 6 o'clock. We have any 9 requests?
We do have 2 board members with advance notice absences, Board and Director Martins.
Yeah, we heard from Director Ulrich. We'll see if he shows up. I guess we've got a quorum anyway, so we can go ahead. Let's call the roll.
Director Curtis. Jack. Jack. Roll call. Roll call. Curtis is here. Director Kentosh.
Here.
Director Quillisi.
Here.
Director Ulrich is not here yet, and Chair Stone.
Here. I guess with that, we'll move on to. With that, we'll move on to item 3. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stand. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, for Allison, are there any additions or amendments to the agenda?
No changes.
Item 5, public concerns. Do we have any public that has a concern? I see nobody waiting.
Yeah, there's nobody.
Okay. Move on to consent items 6, 7, and 8.
Move approval of 6, 7, and 8.
Second. Discuss anything on any one of these? Call the roll, Allison.
Director Curtis.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Okay, that'll move us on to item 9. Classification and compensation study results presentation by CPS HR Consulting Incorporated.
So Ellen's with us tonight to give the presentation. She was the primary contact for Allison and I through the process. Before you tonight is really just a receive and file, accept the report as complete. Ellen's going to give a presentation on their methodology.
We went right by Misha's theory about ex parte contact.
Director Stone, did you receive the email I sent you at 5 o'clock this afternoon?
I probably did, but I don't believe I've looked at it since 5 o'clock.
It answers Director Quillisi's concerns about an ex parte statement. And this is based upon meetings that I had with Director Kentosh. I'll just read the email to you.
Okay.
Hello, Director Stone. Following my meeting with Director Kentosh about state laws and regulations that require disclosure of ex parte communications that bear upon decision-making items on the board agenda, he suggested, and I concur, you state the following before decision-making agenda items on your agenda. Quote, now is the time for the directors to share any substantial information that they may have received from sources outside the public decision-making process and which are relevant to the decision set forth in agenda item, and you fill in the blank. Because this is a receive and file item, that statement is not necessary. It will be necessary for the other items that have decision requests associated with it.
Okay.
So thank you, Director Quillisi, for making that inquiry. And I can give you this piece of paper if you don't already have it on your iPad, Director Stone.
I've got it here, but I would like to have that piece of paper.
Let's use this.
The worst opportunity.
Right.
So this item again is just a receive and file. And accept the report as complete. any action items in the report require a separate action by the board to adopt any changes by a specific resolution. Most of those, if not all, they'll go to the Personnel Committee for review first and then to the board for approval. The study is really just an informational item to say, here's the methodology process that CPS and team went through. So turn it over to you, Ellen. You're going to share your screen.
I think Ian's gonna-
I am.
Okay. You guys have figured that out?
So I don't need to share my screen, correct?
No, he's gonna bring it up right now.
Thank you, Jan. Well, good evening. The purpose of this presentation is to share the final deliverables of the classification and total compensation study conducted by CPSHR on behalf of the Ojai Valley Sanitary District. My name is Ellen Fischel and I served as the project manager for this project. I am also the classification and compensation manager with CPSHR. Next slide, please. Today's agenda is shown on your screen. It includes a brief review of the topics we will cover. Next slide, please. CPSHR is a self-supporting public agency established as a joint powers authority in 1985 and have served as trusted colleagues to clients across North America for more than 30 years. Our headquarters is based in Sacramento, California. CPSHR Consulting is a client-centered human resources and management consulting firm specializing in government and nonprofit clients. Our client list includes city government, school districts, community colleges, county offices, and special districts. Next slide, please. The scope of work that CPSHR conducted is shown on your screen. For the classification study, we reviewed up to 24 classifications and 20 incumbents. We interviewed all of these incumbents and collected position description questionnaires from all of the incumbents as well as the supervisors. We developed recommendations regarding classification concepts and classification structure that align with the current and future district needs. We also updated all of the classification specifications and created up to 10 new classifications for the district. In the total compensation study, we studied up to 21 benchmark classifications and 8 comparable labor market agencies. We collected total compensation data, produced data spreadsheets, benefit analysis, and updated the existing compensation structure and developed recommendations for all pay grades. Tonight, we're providing you with the final report and presentation. Next slide, please. The project was staffed by several members of the CPSHR classification and compensation team and project consultants. Our CPSHR classification and compensation unit members have from 5 to 30 plus years of relevant work experience. From HR analyst through HR director level, we have several people on our team who have taught at the academic level, as well as served as HR director for various cities and counties across the US. Next slide, please. We partnered with Jeff and Allison from the Ojai Valley Sanitary District to complete this project. This project took approximately 11 months to complete. We started early March of last year and we are wrapping up in March of this year. Next slide, please. The goals of a classification study are shown on your screen. Classification studies are designed to maximize your recruitment and retention efforts, especially when combined with a compensation study. Ensure that your classification specifications or position descriptions are current. Ensure positions in a series are properly titled and grouped into job families. Ensure individual employees are properly classified. Ensure accurate minimum qualifications, distinguishing characteristics, and recommend a sound classification structure that will provide clear levels and a career ladder for future growth within the organization. Next slide, please. This slide shows an overview of the classification study process that was completed. The first step in the study process was to review the background materials so that we become familiar with your organization. We conducted a virtual orientation session with staff and described the study to them. After the orientation study, staff were given an online position description questionnaire to complete. Supervisors verified this information. This was our first line of information that we collected from staff regarding their positions. Staff had ample opportunity at this point to provide verification for their positions, document the duties that they perform, and their supervisors also verified this. After this, CPS HR conducted virtual job evaluation interviews with study incumbents as well as supervisors during the end of August and beginning of September to gain a comprehensive understanding of the scope of work performed and then changes in actual work assigned. Our project team analyzed the data from the interviews and PDQs. We recommended allocations and revisions of the classification specifications. We also recommended creation of several new classification specifications in order to allow for those career ladders to be built. Next slide, please. The classification study had 5 major outcomes or changes within the organization. The first major change for the organization was with the collection system operator and treatment plant operator. In these classification series, we recommended 5 distinct levels for the treatment plant operator and 4 distinct levels for the collection system operator that align within the state certification requirements. For the collection system operator, we recommend incorporating a lead operator role at the 3rd and 4th level. In the compensation study, we made recommendations for additional compensation for those as lead operators. In the treatment plant operator series, we recommended introducing a lead operator role in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels, as well as a senior lead operator in the 4th and 5th levels for the treatment plant operator. We did recommend in the compensation study pay supplements for the enhanced roles, proposing pay supplements for lead operator and senior lead operator position as part of the compensation study, as well as the, this is due to the responsibilities and leadership roles within the restructured series. We recommended combining the supervisory positions of the collection system supervisor and the treatment plant supervisor into the collection and treatment operations manager position. The direct reporting now goes to the general manager, encompassing managerial duties of both previous positions. And also we recommended delegating some of the lower level duties to the lead operator and senior lead operator positions previously held by these 2 separate positions. Within the information technology arena, we recommended that the assistant operation manager assume the role of the information technology manager, and expanding the IT tech duties related to administrative tech. So this position now covers both engineering and IT. We also created a 2-tier approach to this with an admin tech 1 and an admin tech 2 position. In the project management series, we recommended a similar restructuring. We created a project manager 1, 2, and senior project manager position. The current senior project manager actually was reallocated to a project manager 2. Those duties were more in line with the project manager 2 than the new senior project manager position. And finally, in the administrative fields, the administrative officer has assumed higher level duties throughout the years, and we recommend retitling the position to Assistant General Manager of Administration. We also recommended creating a lower level APAR clerk position and combining the customer service representative and administrative clerk positions into one job family. Finally, we introduced the office administrator position for additional internal career progression in the administrative area. This is the summary of the classification study outcomes. Are there any questions about the classification study before I jump to the compensation study?
Well, let's see.
When you say classification, you're talking about a particular job description?
Yes, we're talking about specific positions.
So, thank you.
Mr. Kintosh?
This classification study will make a significant change in our organizational structure. And you discussed the combining of the 2 supervisory positions into a single operations manager. Could you, and I look very closely in your document to see an explanation for why you recommended that. Could you summarize why we're combining the treatment plant supervisor and the collection supervisor into one position?
Sure. When we started this study, I believe one of the 2 positions was vacant, and the incumbent had assumed the duties of both positions. So as we progressed through the study, it became clear that this didn't need to be 2 distinct positions, one leading collections and one leading treatment plant operations. That really combined with the lead and senior operators that were introduced at the collection system operator and treatment plant operator positions, allowed for some of those lower level supervisory or lead duties that were previously held by the collections manager or the treatment manager to be delegated to those other roles, so that the collection and treatment operation manager could assume some higher level duties that were previously done separately by both roles.
In an ideal world, that sounds great, but did you consider redundancy and the security of having extra people?
Jim, one of the things that we talked about in the combining was, and we've talked about it in the personnel committee meeting a bunch of times, was the title of supervisor. And really, when we talk about supervisor, someone who's writing the performance evals and conducting personnel type related items. And I think that being combined into one position is appropriate, rather than having two separate sets of supervisors doing two separate sets of personnel reviews. The reality is we're required by law to have a treatment plant because we're a class 4 plant. We're required to have a certified plant operator. So someone who is solely, that is the top person responsible for operations of the treatment plant. That is not me. I cannot be a certified plant operator. It has to be a grade 4 or grade 5 treatment plant operator. We only have one of those today. That's Bradshaw. We only have 1 4 or 1 5. We do not have multiples. In the future, if we got into a situation where we had 2 or 3 grade 4 or grade 5 operators at our plant, one of them could assume those very specific, very regulatory, very operationally based requirements and obligations and responsibilities. Today, we don't have that. And so the certified plant operator resides with Bradshaw purely because he's the most senior and he has the certifications that are required by state law. So we could have in the future multiple grade 4, grade 5 operators if the operators chose to get those tests, but we don't have that now. So if we do, we could still have a situation where one of them is a certified plant operator, the regulatory required senior, more sophisticated operator of the plant, and another person could be the overall operations manager performing the duties of the supervision, which is the performance reviews and all of those things. So not taking away anything, we only have 1 grade 4 or grade 5 operator here currently. And so we used to have 2. Ron and Bradshaw were the only 2. With Ron retiring a number of years ago, we're left with 1. But that is a separate sort of state requirement. And I think that from a supervisory writing performance reviews, I think we have it set right the way we have it proposed here.
Well, just for the record and for the sake of getting information out there, I did express my concerns at the personnel committee about not having, we have a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant and there's no supervisor in charge of that. That takes me a little while to get my arms around that. I know everything works out on paper, but to have that extra, I mean, when you say we have 1 grade 4, that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. So I understand. I do want to point out the other side of the coin, which is, as a board, we're primarily responsible for policy. So all I can do is express my concerns, leave it at that.
Well, I share the concern of only having 1 4, and I've encouraged our treatment plant operators that are currently grade 3s to work towards getting a 4, because it opens the world up for them for more opportunity in terms of responsibility and steps up the ladder. When you're a grade 3 and there's a grade 4 above you and a grade 5, and both the grade 4 and the grade 5 have lead and senior titles that go with them, and the certified plant operator, you have grade 3s that have gone for a grade 1, 2, and a 3. So they've made it up 3 steps of the ladder. Well, there are 5 steps of the ladder above them. between the 4 lead senior, 5 lead senior, and the certified plant operator. So there's adequate room for them to grow and assume more responsibility and compensation that goes with it. And I think we've encouraged them to do that. But again, it comes down to a personal choice about whether or not an employee wants to assume those responsibility and have that accountability. There's, responsibility and accountability, they go hand in hand. So, you gotta be willing to do both. And we're encouraging our grade 3s to assume some of those more senior roles.
I'm prepared to cede my views on this just because we're responsible for policy rather than detailed organizational stuff. But the second question I had, when I read this document, kind of reads like a succession plan. You have 2 assistant general managers. Are we actually going to hire 2, or is that for?
It's a succession plan. It is absolutely the goal to have a roadmap that can be filled in irregardless of an individual's name, but it does allow the district to say, hey, you can come in here at a step and work up to more responsibility and more authority in a whole variety of different ways.
The idea is to have this assistant GM engineering as kind of a holder for, say, you decide to retire someday. Someone can come in, take that position for a year or so and learn the ropes before you retire. Is that what?
Well, it's not really about me per se. It's really an organizational thing that somebody can come in from an administrative role and work their way up the ladder. Somebody can come in an engineering role, work their way up the ladder, and somebody can come in from an operations perspective and work their way up the ladder. And depending upon sort of the maturity of the organization at different points in time, you may have one of those 3 that is more senior and more knowledgeable than the other 2, but it allows for some diversification of some of the tasks and roles to be able to share in some of the operational needs of the district. So the blueprint is not about individual names. It's really about an organizational chart that says you can come in, spend your career here, grow, and if you're willing to take the steps, take the tests, take the experience, you can achieve lots of different levels in any one of those 3. I don't know which may be the most appropriate in a year from now or 5 years or 10 years from now, but the organizational chart will allow the flow to occur in different ways depending upon the time and how long people spend in grade.
So you're not planning to go out next week and start advertising for the assistant GM?
No, we have the other thing that comes to play, and we had a conversation about this a little bit, is the budget sets how many positions the district is approved to hire. And so that is done in the budget. Currently, we have 3 positions that are vacant that are approved in the previous budget. We have 2 in administration and 1 in the collections. We're not going to go out and hire fill these charts. We have functional needs in administration and collections. We're not going to go hire 3 new assistant general managers. We're going to go fill the positions that functionally we need to fill, which is 2 in administration and 1 in collection. If there's ever a discussion about, gosh, we need 22 positions instead of 21, well, then there'll be a whole process going through the personnel committee to say, here's where we are, here's the need, here's the tasks that need to get completed. Let's go through the personnel committee and say, okay, now we're going to amend the budget to say there are 22 eligible positions and go from there. So this doesn't hire anybody. This doesn't actually approve anything to be spent. It is purely a blueprint for how all of the positions and the job descriptions sort of flow in an organization.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Director Kinda.
I have another question for the consultant. If she is done,
No.
hold it to the end.
Guess we're ready to move on to
Next chart.
next chart.
So next slide, please. So now we are going to talk about the total compensation study. The goal is to ensure equitable pay for Ojai Valley employees based upon their job duties and responsibilities. The compensation study truly looks at compensation at the position level and not necessarily the incumbent level. We'll touch upon that again at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. The total compensation study process is shown on your screen. It's an initiation phase where we reviewed background materials, including classification specifications, salary schedules, pay practices, and organizational charts. We confirmed the study parameters with the Ojai Valley Sanitary District. We conducted data collection and developed an instrument to validate the data and complete missing information. The data gathered will help us know what other labor markets are paying for comparable benchmark classes and how this information is used to establish salary recommendations. The project team followed through with labor market agencies to request further information or clarification on job matching levels and analyze the data received. We provided the internal project team with a job matching review sheet to get confirmation on our job matches. Then we developed a salary survey summary with the min, midpoint, and max base pay as compared to the labor market's min, midpoint, and max to see what the variance was above or below the market. We conducted salary range recommendations for the positions included in the study and conducted an in-depth benefit analysis. We prepared and delivered the report and final presentation. Next slide, please. The final labor market agencies that the Ojai Valley Sanitary District were compared against are shown on your screen. I'm not going to read through the list for the sake of time, but those are shown on your screen. They were agreed upon between CPS HR and the Ojai Valley Sanitary District. Next slide, please. The benchmark classifications that were included in the study are now shown on the screen. For the purposes of this study, these are the classifications that we went out into the labor market agencies and actually found comparable jobs for. You'll notice that several of the positions in the Ojai Valley Sanitary District are not included in this list. At the end of the study, we did provide salary range recommendations for these positions based on internal equity. So making sure, say, for example, the treatment plant operator 1 and 4, we provided salary range recommendations for those positions based on internal equity between the treatment plant operator 2 and 3. If the treatment plant operator 2 or 3 rose, we would recommend that, of course, the treatment plant operator 1 and 4 also rose. Next slide, please. The total compensation elements included in the study were retirement practices and contributions, health, medical, dental, and vision based on the richest family tier offered, leave benefits such as sick leave, holidays, vacation, PTO, administrative or management leave, other forms of compensation, retirement pickup, deferred compensation incentives, education certificates, and performance and longevity. We also collected the lowest and highest employer health insurance contribution and cash out options within various MOUs for 9 additional labor market agencies within Ventura County. So these are cities that surround the Ojai Valley Sanitary District. These were not necessarily the labor market agencies we matched to, but it was an additional benefit element that we collected for this specific study. Next slide, please. One of the biggest pieces of a compensation study is the job matching process. This can be one of the most difficult parts of the study because each agency is different in how they use their positions. To go through the job matching process, we looked at the preponderance of duties and other different factors to see if a job is a match. We follow the rule of thumb that a job match should have at least 70% of the core duties and responsibilities to be a match. Job matches were not based on titles. We did comprehensive research and analyzed job descriptions, organization charts, allocation or position control documents from other agencies to ensure it was an appropriate match. We also reached out to several labor market agencies for confirmation of similar classifications as needed. CPSHR's best practice is that a benchmark position must have a minimum of 3 classification matches to be analyzed. In most studies, it is common to have some classes for which limited market data exists. There were several benchmarks in this classification study, in this compensation study, that did not meet that requirement of 3 comparable classifications. And for those classifications, we used internal equity to make recommendations on the salary structure. Next slide, please. On the screen is a sample of the individual benchmark salary survey data sheet for the treatment plan operator 2 position. We developed individual data sheets for each individual benchmark classification that shows the comparable classification we found at each agency, along with relevant data associated with that classification, such as salary range min, midpoint, and maximum. The data sheet also shows how many matches were found in the overall median and mean data. The salary bandwidth percent, or the spread between the salary min and salary maximum data points, is also listed. All data is represented in monthly min-max figures on the data sheet. We find providing this level of transparency in job matching provides for better understanding and acceptance of the study results. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the salary survey summary with both base salary and total compensation data for each of the benchmarks. A positive number on this slide that's shaded on the right-hand columns represents that the Ojai Valley Sanitary District is below the labor market for each of the representative benchmarks. A negative number means that your jobs are above the labor market and needs the indicated percentage to reach the labor market. That's opposite. I'm sorry, let me read that again. A positive number represents that you are below the labor market and you need to increase by that percentage to reach the labor market. So where you see 16% on a midpoint, that means that you are 15 to 16% below the labor market for that benchmark. If the number is negative, that means that your position is above the labor market. You'll see some positions are negative 11% above the labor market. This means you're paying 11% more than the labor market is paying for similar positions. CPS HR methodology is to use market median for compensation considerations versus the mean or average. For benchmark classifications in the survey that fell within 5% above or 5% below the labor market, CPS HR considers these to be at market. The survey results display that Ojai Valley Sanitary District is generally paying slightly below market for some positions. On average, you are 3.37% below market median overall, but some classifications are significantly above the market. So there's 3 classifications that we would consider above the market in terms of pay. Overall, you're about 3.37% below the market. Next slide, please. This slide is similar data to what you saw before in a different format. This shows labor market competitiveness, and this refers to an organization's ability to attract and retain top talent within the broader employment market. You'll see you have the majority of your jobs at labor market. You have a few that are slightly above the labor market, and you do have quite a few on both ends that are either significantly below the labor market or significantly above the labor market. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, where you were in comparison to the labor market, we made salary structure updates, recommended salary structure updates. We assigned all study job classifications with the ranges found in relevant labor markets for similar jobs as seen in previous and future tables. The main objective was to align the new Ojai Valley sanitary minimums and midpoints to similar range parameters in the relevant labor market. Once study job classifications are assigned to market-based pay grades, the Ojai Valley Sanitary District we would assist them in assigning the remaining non-studied jobs to pay grades based on the current internal job relationships. This will establish internal job equity and ensure that the ranges for all jobs are externally competitive and internally consistent. So there are some changes to your salary structure that we recommended. The first one is increasing the vertical separation between the grades. So we changed the grades to go from 1% between each grade to 2.5% each grade, while maintaining a 35% bandwidth between the grades. We increased maintained a 5% increase between steps within grades. We added 2 additional steps. So your steps now go from 1 to 7 instead of 1 to 5. And then we also condensed the salary structure overall from 155 grades to 50 grades. This was done essentially by increasing the separation between grades from 1% to 2.5%. So these adjustments are designed to improve fairness and flexibility within your organization by enhancing both the vertical and horizontal separation while streamlining the overall system. We aim to create a more equitable and efficient compensation framework for everyone involved. Before I go to the next slide, you'll notice that there is a significant change in the actual numerical value of the pay grades associated with positions. This is largely due to the fact that you went from 155 grades to 50 grades. A position that used to be maybe pay grade 187 may have been moved down to pay grade, say 115, because pay grade 187 no longer exists. Next slide, please. So this is a hard slide to see probably from your vantage point, but this is the recommended salary structure. You'll see that you still have grades indicated numerically. There are now 7 steps. Step 4 became the midpoint. Previously, step 3 was the midpoint. Some things to note in here is that several positions placed on the salary schedule were done based on internal equity. So I mentioned specifically the treatment plant operators. We did not study the treatment plant operator 1 in the series, but because we recommended that the treatment plant operator 2 be placed at pay grade 112, we recommended 10% below that to place the treatment plant operator 1 at pay grade 110. You'll see that consistency throughout this structure. Next slide, please. So this is just a continuation of the salary structure. This is your higher level pay grades and then your managerial positions at the bottom of your screen. One thing to note, and not included in this study, was individual incumbent placement within the new salary structure. So we recommended that these are the pay ranges for these positions. We did not recommend where individual incumbents should be placed, what step they should go in. We did provide some implementation scenarios within our final report, but not actually placing incumbents within the salary schedule. The study looked at the pay of classifications, not individuals. So we wanted to go and look at what your senior project manager was making in the market compared to other senior project managers in the market, not necessarily what an individual incumbent was making in the market compared to other individual incumbents. Ojai Valley Sanitary District should implement specific policies on the movement within steps. Some of these recommendations were provided in the final report, specifically that step 6 and step 7 was not automatic after 1 year, potentially 1.5 to 2 years to achieve step 6 or step 7 after achieving step 5. Next slide, please. Before I get into total compensation, was there any questions on the actual salary structure itself?
Director Quillisi.
Thank you. You said you were condensing 155 levels into 50, but your number levels in the chart still go to 150.
It starts 101.
Okay. Right. But even those, only a few of those 50 are actually tied to job descriptions. So
Correct.
why do we have them?
Correct. So we recommend this structure so that you have consistency. The positions are not placed in perfect sequential order because this was based on market pay. So for example, if you're looking at the senior treatment plant operator level 5, the market justified that position start at pay grade 128, which is $49.94 starting salary. But then we jump to the project manager 2, which is several steps below it. It's actually 7.5% above the senior treatment plant operator 5. And the market for that position dictated that position start, or the midpoint for that position should be, and I can't even read the numbers, they're so small, should be 63.27. So you will see vacant grades within this salary structure, and we recommend that based on the market value of these positions.
Okay. Back to the treatment plant operator 2 and 1. I think that's the previous chart.
Yes.
Thought you said you were making since the 2 was level 112, one was 10% below, but if it's 2.5% per step, it's only 5% below.
114.
That's,
Yeah, she just
My,
misstated
my
it.
mistake. I read the other operator too. Thank you. Okay. If we can go back to the classification study at point that's appropriate, Chair.
Yes.
Your classification study had 5 appendices, only one of which was populated. The other 4 had to do with allocations of various sorts. And since there was no content there, I wasn't sure what that discussion was about.
those appendix, though, the classification study wrapped up in the early fall, and those appendixes were provided several months ago. They are accessible. I gave Allison a direct link, and they're accessible on the team site. Those appendixes do deal with allocations. They deal with what the specific changes were to each of the positions included in the study. They are a copy of the classification specifications that were updated. And they cover supplemental classification data that was provided several months ago.
Okay, so some of that's
It
in
is
the rest
not-
of our packet here,
Yes,
like the classifications.
yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any further questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question for, a request for Jeff. Ellen said that this study has been going on for 11 months. It took 11 months to do. I know it was in the pipeline a considerable time before that. So this is a well thought out, long planned endeavor. I would just like you to maybe speak briefly on the motivation for doing this study. This study was a normal industry standard practice, or this is how public agencies usually set their benefits. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's been OVSD's practice to do a class and comp study every 5 years. So we started the class and comp study with CPS. It was right on the cusp of that 5-year time frame. The additional thing that we took and put in a little bit more detail was all of the analysis over the organizational structure, so that we had a class and comp study that wasn't just looking at who we are today, but putting together a roadmap and, like you said, a succession plan that was for the long term. I look at this sort of document and this sort of structure as something that will very good template for 5, 10, 20 years worth of growth for the district, and allows us with detailed job descriptions to say, here you are, here's where someone is today, and here's where they can grow, and here's how they can assume more responsibility. So it was kind of the 5-year plan, but it's also the succession plan for the future as well. And you know, Ellen touched on it a couple of times. Nothing in this study has anybody's name attached to it. Study is based on sort of titles and job descriptions and responsibilities, and then people move in those categories or boxes as they move through their career. And so this is not a study that looks at names of people we have here today. It really says, here are the tasks that the district needs to do to operate and to continue to meet all of our regulatory requirements. And then we hire people and hopefully have them learn and grow through that chart. So it was really the 5-year plan, but it's really a long-term succession plan as well.
So this considerable work was not done as a knee-jerk reaction to any particular concern. This is part of a long planning process,
Yeah.
how we normally do our business. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's all.
Further questions?
So the last element of this study was the total compensation elements. I'm going to briefly run through kind of where Ojai Valley compares to all of the total compensation elements that we collected. In terms of retirement contributions, the contributions vary based on the employer and the retirement group. For the classic group, the rates range from 10.41 to 17.55%, with Ojai Valley Sanitary District contributing 12.63 to this group. For the PERPA group, the rates range from 7.68 to 8.48, with Ojai Valley contributing 8%. Ojai Valley Sanitary District offers a 7% pickup of the employee contribution in line with other surveyed agencies. We would say that your retirement contributions tend to be in line with other agencies. For deferred compensation plans, almost all agencies surveyed offer deferred compensation plans. 4 agencies surveyed provide monthly employer contributions, either up to 6% of the annual salary or $2,000 match. Currently, Ojai Valley Sanitary District does not offer employer contributions to deferred compensation plans. In terms of employee health insurance contributions, the total monthly employer contributions range from $1,600 to $2,800 per month. Ojai Valley Sanitary District contributes $2,500 per month, exceeding the median by 4.4% and ranking 3rd overall. 3 agencies offer flexible credit or HSA accounts, with most not offering an opt-out stipend. Again, when we're talking about health insurance, we're talking about the highest tier family rate for health, dental, and vision. Health insurance premium analysis. Ojai Valley Sanitary District offers the richest benefit in health insurance premiums, ranging from $1,300 to $2,500. Most surrounding jurisdictions offer an opt-out stipend, with Ojai Valley's current stipend at $650 per month. Life insurance and vacation accrual. Life insurance payouts vary from $40,000 to 2 times the annual salary. Ojai Valley Sanitary District aligns with market practices with a tiered approach based on position. Vacation accrual rates range from 10 to 23.75 days in years 0 to 5, and Ojai Valley Sanitary District offers 11. Most agencies either offered that 10 to 11 or 23. There was very few, if any, that fell in between those 2 factors. For holidays and sick leave, agencies offer between 11 and 16 paid holidays, with Ojai Valley Sanitary District offering 12. The sick leave policies vary, with Ojai Valley Sanitary District offering 12 days per year, and most agencies have a cap on accrual rates. Longevity pay and additional benefits. Half of the surveyed agencies offer longevity pay ranging from $7,500 to $2,500 annually. Ojai Valley Sanitary District currently does not offer longevity pay. Car and cell phone allowances, education degree compensation, and tuition reimbursement vary among agencies greatly. Ojai Valley Sanitary District provides vehicles if needed and cell phones if required. This is very much in line with the industry. They offer the 2nd highest tuition reimbursement at $5,000 annually. Next slide, please. The final report and presentation provide detailed information concerning the scope of the project, the methodology used to complete the classification and total compensation studies, as well as calculations and the results of the study that show where the Ojai Valley Sanitary District is positioned in comparison to the labor market. Ojai Valley Sanitary District should consider the competitive position in the labor market and the ability to recruit, retain, reward employees now and in the future. Next slide, please. CPSHR suggests that the commission review the overall classification structure, individual position allocations, and update classification specifications regularly, or at least every 5 years. In addition, we recommend conducting a comprehensive salary study every 3 to 5 years that is both maintained regularly. I would like to sincerely thank Jeff and Allison and the Ojai Valley Sanitary District team for their hard work, guidance, and support during this study. Are there any other questions?
Any more questions? No, I think we're good, Ellen. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yep.
I guess we just need to have that for Steve and file.
Yeah, so that was, receive and file, and then, as we've worked through some of the individual topics, those will actually go to the Personnel Committee for review, and then there are a number of the Personnel Committee recommendations here on the agenda for actual adoption based on some of the recommendations from the committee. But any action from that study has to be done by a specific resolution. The report doesn't make anything happen.
Yeah, I'll just add for the rest of the directors that are here, and I know that Director Curtis has been through several of these before, as well as myself, and looking at this, there's still some of these things that I'm trying to work through and understand, but I think this is probably the best classification study we've done in a long, long time. It seems pretty thorough, and it's taking into account things that'll help us and the employees in the future. So thank everybody for that.
I'd have to say, I've seen this sort of thing done at Rockwell within the division that I worked, in Cincinnati Bell within Computer Sciences Corporation. And there are new pieces of the classification study that I never saw before that really impressed me. Details of how ability to do certain things and also responsibilities. I thought it was detailed, more accurate than most those that I have seen in the past. So good job.
All right. Moving on to item 10, contract number 2024-.
We need to vote on item 9.
Just to receive and file.
Receive and file.
Okay.
Item 10, this is a piece of work that came out of over the past few years, the 2 spills on Burnham Road and the old enzite pipe or asphalt pipe, asbestos pipe. We've done a condition assessment of all of the pipe on Burnham Road from the siphon that comes up on Charlotte's Place all the way down to Santa Ana Lift Station. There's about 1.6 miles of pipe. Guys have done CCTV work, and then Liz has gone through and looked at all the as-built and watched all those videos again, and put together a project to go after the pipe that's in the worst condition. So we're proposing a project that goes from where our spill was on Upper Burnham Road all the way down to Rockaway, or a little past Rockaway, line all of the 18-inch pipe. It's in the worst condition. So we're going to do the design in-house, but we're going to bring in for our QA/QC outside expertise to look over those plans, look over those videos, look over those specific recommendations, and make sure that we're using the latest, greatest information that we have for the lining process. We would hope to go out to bid and do construction this summer on that project and get much of the 18-inch pipe lined as we can. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a base bid. We're going to do a base project, and then we're going to include additive alternates. Depending upon the price we get, we may add more work to it if we get a very good unit price. So we're going to make the contract awarded based on the base bid, and then if we decide that the unit price is really good, maybe we extend and grab a couple more sections or a few more sections of pipe based on the restraints of funding it as we go forward. So it's kind of a typical, here's the base bid, here's an additive alternate A, B, or C, and try and get as much bang for the buck once they mobilize. If we've got a great unit price, we'll keep going. But that's at design, at bid, at award, that'll come later. But that's how we're going to structure the process.
Dr. Wilson?
Thank you. A couple of things. When you said the add-on, that's the 21-inch?
Yes.
Okay. Second, where the siphon comes in, Upper Burnham Road, that's a Y junction, I guess, the other side of which is draining Rancho Matilaha.
Yeah, so
That's sufficiently new that it doesn't require lining, or?
no, it is an old line too, but we don't need an 18-inch pipe to go to pick up that line. So what we plan on doing for the getting back to Rancho Matilaha, and I think there's 3 houses on Burnham that drain into that feeder.
Other side of the Y?
Side of the Y. Half the Y comes from the green waste location, dives under the river and comes up. Right where it comes up on the west side of the river, just below, in a field just below Los Encinos tract, there's a Y. And that other end of the Y goes up and picks up Rancho Matilaha. But we don't need an 18-inch line through there. What we're going to do is we're going to pull in a 8-inch HDPE pipe inside the existing asbestos pipe, and then just grout the annular space and sort of abandon the 18-inch asbestos pipe that goes to Rancho Matilaha.
Sounds like another project.
It'll be another project, but it's not in anywhere near as bad a shape as this piece that goes downhill.
Is that ACP just not as weathered?
Not as weathered. It hasn't had flow in it really, except Rancho Matilaha, since 2007. They did the siphon. Remember the site before the siphon existed, right there at the green waste, we had a line that went across the river just below the surface of the river down in the rock, and then turned south.
Sometimes it was below the surface of the river.
It usually was below the surface when they put in the bulldozers almost every year and covered it back up. And finally, when it failed numerous times over the years, that's when they decided to do the siphon.
It sort of went through Rancho Matilaha.
It went across the river to the west side and then went down the western bank. And right when you go across the bridge and right down in the holler below the road, that's where Rancho Matilaha comes in. And so that came in down that line along the west side of the bank. So we don't need that 18-inch anymore. We just need an 8-inch. Just going to drag an 8-inch HDPE pipe through that space and then fill the annular space with grout and abandon it in place.
Dr. Orwell, do you have a question? No. Okay. Director Curtis.
I just thought I'd tell you how that pipe got in there. It wasn't supposed to be that pipe. It was supposed to be clay. Miners Oak Sanitary District paid Oakview for putting clay pipe all the way to the lift station. There's Oaks, and I got the shaft on it.
It's listed on our as-built as clay, but it's not.
Matilaha wasn't there. Had no reason for it to be up there, so it was up to Miners Oak. That's where Miners Oak comes out. They had to attach it there. I think Oakview was about to run out of money, so they borrowed a little money from us. They never told us.
Fixing it now.
It was a lousy pipe.
So this is really just, we're going to do all the work in-house. We'll all do the design in-house. We'll do the CM and construction management in-house. But given the critical nature of large diameter lining, we're going to bring in an outside expert to just look over our specifications and plans and make sure we've called out the right resin, called out the right materials, called out the right structural modulus, all those sorts of things.
An expensive education for the staff.
Yeah, and you know, some of these other outside engineers, they're doing it every year and keeping up with the manufacturers about the specific resin mixes and all those things. And it's just a way to get that subject matter expertise pulled into our team. But
Thanks for the history lesson, Director Curtis. Director Kintosh, you have any questions?
Yeah.
Well, no, I think $10,000 is a pretty good deal for that work. For a motion?
Yes.
Yeah, I move that we authorize or approve item 10, contract number 2024-15 for Burnham Road Truck Sewer Rehab Project, and items A and B.
Second that.
We have a motion in a second. So I guess I'm a little confused on this, so I'll lean towards our counsel. So should I ask about the ex parte on this as well?
Yes.
Now's the time for directors to share any substantial information that you may have received from sources outside of the public decision-making process, which are relevant to the decisions set forth in agenda item 10A and B, contract number 2024-15. Director Ulrich. Director Curtis. Any ex parte
What?
communications with outside on this?
This, no.
Hearing no. Have a roll call vote, Allison.
Director Ulrich, Director Curtis. We're voting on item 10 now.
We'll be voting on it.
Item 10.
Item 10, Burnham Trunk Sewer Rehabilitation Project.
We're voting on bringing on the QA/QC expert for the lining project, Jack.
Director Kintosh,
Yes.
Director Pelosi,
Yes.
and Chair Stone.
Yes. I also had no ex parte on that.
How did you ask yourself?
Moving on to item 11.
So this is a long sort of, the guys did a great job pulling together some pictures and some history. So our current disinfection system is performed by 5 banks of ultraviolet lights, and they look like fluorescent bulbs, and they're about 5 feet long, and they're in these racks that hang down in the water. And so the distance between the bulbs is a calculated dimension so that there's always water getting irradiated by a lamp. So you can't sort of sneak through and not get hit with ultraviolet light. As a backup, we're required to have a chlorine bleach system to make sure it's in place if there's ever any problems with the UV. You know, a breaker blows and the whole UV goes down, kind of systemic failure. And so I think the UV is great. Some places use it. More modern way to use it now is rather than water flowing through a trench with the lights hanging down in it, you actually push water through pipes, and there's a UV lamp in the middle so that you don't have flowing water. But to rebuild our UV system with a whole modern system, be literally several $1 million. And so this is a perfectly functional system. It just has problems because it's out in the weather and underwater, and every little connection between every little light, between every little rack, you know, there's wear and tear over time. And so the time has come. We've had some problems in the cabinets too, where some moisture gets in the cabinets and all the little wiring connections and all the various little breakers and electronic equipment is starting to show its age. This system has been in place since April of 2000. We upgrade the lamps as they have a certain life, and when they hit their life, the computer keeps track of the life per lamp. And when they hit their life, we take out the lamps and put in new lamps because they degrade over time from natural time. So what's before you today is to basically rebuild the entire system, all the little wires, all the little diodes, all the little boards that are in the 5 cabinets. It's just time to fix them. We have these intermittent failures, and trying to figure out which board and which wire and which screw and which soldered joint is going bad is near impossible to figure out what's been going wrong. So we're going to go through and rebuild each of the racks that hang down in the water, because all those, every time they change those lamps, they pull those connectors out. It's like, you know, if you had an electrical outlet that's got a boot around it and it's always submerged in the water, and you take it out all the time, pull the boot out, butts with the plug and put it back in the water. Over time, you just get water leaks into that connector. So this is really just a complete rebuild of the system. It's lasted us 20 years as a system. The lamps, you know, have been replaced, but the system has been in place for 20 years. This is really just the way to go ahead and modernize.
Is 20 years lifetime sort of system what you expect from the rebuilt system?
I would expect this again. I would expect it to probably go longer because the current boards we have, they're all the wire tie downs are screwed on. So every one of those, I mean, there's hundreds in these cabinets. And so coming in with a fully integrated and tested solid state system, I would expect it to last longer, and I would expect there to be fewer intermittent problems. Because when one little screw comes loose or some water gets into the cabinets and starts to corrode, think about having 1,000 battery terminals like you have in your car, and every one of those can come loose or get some corrosion on them. That's what we have right now.
And there'll be solder connections primarily.
They'll all be soldered and they'll all be pre-made computer boards and ballasts and everything is all getting replaced.
So when I read in the board packet, I thought I read that we were going to do this a little at a time, and it looked like we were going to do the whole thing at once. So do we have a plan for taking care of the treatment while that's offline?
So we'll buy all the parts. We'll have one contract, but we'll only take down one cabinet at a time. So we'll still have the 4 running. The other thing we have, which we upgraded 2 years ago, our chemical system. We upgraded all the stuff so it is modern equipment. So the guys almost, I don't want to say instantly, but in practical terms, almost instantly turn on the chemical system if they need to. So we'll run 4 banks at a time, just take one out at a time, work our way through the system, and have the chemical system fully ready to go if we need to. But we don't like using the chemical system because there's a little, it's not guesswork, but when you dose, you take a water sample and you know what, you come up with a value of how much chlorine you need to put in. Then the water goes through the chlorine contact chamber back and forth. And when it gets to the end of that chlorine contact chamber, you do 2 things. You calculate, has it been disinfected? And is there any residual chlorine in the water? And from that calculation, you then determine how much bisulfite you need to put in to the system to get rid of the chlorine. But you want to put just a touch more bisulfite so you make sure you don't let chlorine go out and you don't let ammonia go out. So you got to get full ammonia disinfection and you got to get full chlorine disinfection. But you don't want to overdose the bisulfite because it has a problem. And when it hits the river, it affects dissolved oxygen. And so there's this inexact scientific guessing that goes on about initial dose, residual dose, and bisulfite dose. So we don't like using the chlorine if we don't have to, but it's there if we need to.
Director Curtis.
Does that include new bulbs when it comes?
Yes. All new bulbs, all new racks, all new, the harness that goes from the rack into the cabinet, all of that's all new. The only thing that really stays is the cabinet itself.
12-week time.
We're seeing the whole electronic world. We're seeing lead times that are excessive. I think our VFDs, our variable frequency drives for our nitrate TMDL project were 8 weeks. It's a year and a half. And so anything that's electronic is really getting long lead time. It's almost like you put in the order and they go mine the aluminum and, it's literally that extreme. So 12 weeks isn't bad. We currently have for our influent pump, influent valves that we just ordered, those were 20 weeks where they're tracking. We think we're going to get them at 20 weeks.
You mentioned that the light bulb is in the middle of a tube. What about the tubes? Is that?
So the light bulb has a sleeve around it. So we keep them covered because you look at them, it's like looking at ultraviolet light. I mean, it's like it can burn your eyes if you stare at it like you stare at a welder. And so we keep them covered with these mats. But if you look down in the water, you'll see hundreds of these lamps and they have a clear, it's not plexiglass, it's a glass sleeve around it. And the water just flows through the rectangular channel with these hundreds of lamps hanging down in it. But they're at set spacing so that you can't have water that sneaks through.
Dr. Quillisi.
You said you'll take the racks offline and the cabinets at the time. Is 4 of the 5 operating sufficient? And if so, why do we have 5?
Well, you need more banks depending on your flow. And so at our normal operating level, we would like to have either 2 or 3 banks online at a time. Now, it all depends on,
Not always using 5 banks.
always using 5. We are right now because we're having some of these intermittent problems. And our flows are up higher because of this year's rains. But normally we would like to see 2 or 3 banks on at a time and have a 4th and a 5th if we see a problem. One of the problems with disinfection is you can have everything right, everything perfect, everything normal from day to day to day to day to day. And you'll take a sample and you'll get a couple of cloudy tubes. And you don't know if they're gonna positive out in a day or two and show this. When you do a disinfection test, it's not an instantaneous test. It takes about 3 days to really flush out whether or not it's gonna go hot. And so you can take a tube and it can be a little cloudy and then it'll go away. But it might in another day or so stay cloudy and turn hot with a little bubble in it, which means that you've got some algae and you've got some infection you didn't occur. So sometimes when the flow will be up a little bit and the particle counter shows things are a little, just half a degree off of normal, and they get a cloudy tube, they'll fire up a 4th or a 5th bank just to make sure that have a worse situation than we do today.
Well, I'd like to, we approve item 11, A and B.
And then the second. Now's the time for the directors to share any substantial information received from sources outside the public decision-making process and which are relevant to the decision set forth into item 11A and B, ultraviolet disinfection.
No.
No, no.
Director Curtis? No. Yeah, no substantial information outside this room for the deliberation? From outside source?
I'm not understanding.
So this has to do with the ex parte, with you having conversations with somebody outside.
No.
Okay. No as well.
So we have a motion and a second. Director Ulrich,
Yes.
Director Curtis,
Now the vote.
Yes.
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Thanks, Jack. It's a new thing, but we'll get through it.
I hate to say it, but I think we need a new sound system. I liked it when we had the microphone, you could hear somebody.
We're looking at that again. See if we can do something for Director Curtis. Okay, moving on to item 12.
So this is the first item to come before the board that is a result of the Personnel Committee's deliberations and meetings over the past few months. I think we've had 6 Personnel Committee meetings. This is the first item. So what this is looking to approve is sort of 2 main groups. One is approve the job descriptions and that were prepared as part of the classification study. And 2 is approve the grades and the levels and all the numbers in the ladder for the various positions and the grades, the steps in the numerical ladder. We went through this with the Personnel Committee and they thought it was time to refer it to the board for consideration and approval. But this is right out of the class and comp study, basically their market analysis.
Thank you.
To adjustments.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and it includes the 2 salary adjustments that for the project manager 2 and the assistant GM administration position.
Questions?
Would it be possible to approve several items at once, or do we have to do it one item at a time? Because these are all very similar.
I think we vote on each agenda item separately.
Okay.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
We want to do ex parte. Are we doing it the ex parte after? Are we supposed to? do it
Oh,
before?
I've been doing the ex parte after the motion,
It's like you're supposed to do it before.
Before the motion.
before the motion. Okay. We get this, I promise.
Robert, did you send that to me so I could put that like on the agenda? Oh, you did.
Okay, so before the motions, do another ex parte. Now's the time for the directors to share any substantial information that you may have received from sources outside of the public decision-making process, which are relevant to the decision set forth in the agenda item number 12, Resolution 2024-04.
Answer is no.
Thank you, Director Curtis.
No.
I'm no as well. Now I'll entertain a motion.
Anything that we heard in a personnel committee meeting.
Question on this item. It's on the treatment plant and budget system. My question is, so would a person on the collection system have an opportunity to be this person?
Yes.
What's the caveat to what would he have to know?
The supervisor has to know how to manage people, make performance reviews, implement a safety program, implement administrative policies, and implement various regulatory things like air permits, hazardous materials permits, confined space entry, all of those things. A collection system operator cannot be a certified plant operator because the state requires a grade 4 treatment plant or a grade 5 treatment plant. But you can have a supervisor over both groups and have a separate person who is functioning as that treatment plant operator. A collection system person,
Collection person is supposed to get that.
collection,
Plant operator, right?
right? But I can be a manager of the group, not a certified plant operator. I'm not a collection system operator. The person who manages operations can be from either side of the fence. They're both completely capable of supervising people, of managing work, of doing budgets, of doing performance reviews, of all of those things. Bradshaw and I have conversations all the time about treatment plant processes. And I come up with ideas of things that I see in SCADA. I see, hey, what's going on with this? Why are we doing that? Is there any way to optimize this? But it's his responsibility to the state to make those changes. I can't tell him what to do. I can't tell him how to operate that plant because I'm not a treatment plant 4 or a treatment plant 5 operator. He is a certified plant operator because of his grade and his certification.
But someone could come out of the system crew, get the same certification.
No, it can't get the same certification. He could come out of the collection system crew and be the overall operations manager.
They don't have to be the
Yeah,
treatment.
we did have this conversation in the personnel committee meeting because that was a concern of mine. That we would be maybe passing up somebody that had the ability to do it. And the conversation was the same. They don't have to have the certification. They just need to know how to manage the people in the process.
So the plant operator would theoretically be below this manager.
Yes, that plant operator has specific obligations to the state in terms of operating that plant. And I can tell Bradshaw what to do, and he can say, no, I'm not doing it because I have that requirement and that obligation to the state to operate that plant in conformance with plant operations. But you can have a supervisor who manages people, who manages workload, who manages budgets, who does performance reviews, that does air permits, that does hazardous material permits, that overall runs operations. But that person can then somebody else who's running that and certifying that plant. It's no different than the operation we have today and the relationship difference between Bradshaw and me. I'm his supervisor, but I can't tell him what to do with the plant. I can make suggestions. I can make him explain it to me. But if I tell him to open a gate or change a valve, he can say, no, I'm not doing it. And there's nothing I can do because of the state rules that make that obligation of that certified plant operator run that plant, be that expert.
I feel that's going to be a very dangerous situation. If that person will do certain things his way, cause an upset or fine.
Well, we have it now, Jack. And I completely understand and respect Bradshaw's authority and responsibility to the state because he has that specific obligation to the state to run that plant. And I'm not going to ask him to do something wrong because that's illegal. And if I asked him to do something wrong, he'd report me to the state and say, my boss is telling me to change a valve. It's no different. It's exactly the same going forward as we have today. That someone can be a manager, that somebody can be a supervisor, and someone else can hold a very specific obligation to the state because of that certification. I don't have any treatment plant grade certifications. I'm not a treatment plant 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I'm a registered engineer. It's different. There's some acknowledgement in regulations that an engineer can have expertise. But when it comes down to turning that valve, that's his job. And I respect that because that's the way the state set it up. And he has the expertise and the knowledge to do that more so than I do.
If he's out working for the collection fee,
Well, it's no different than,
relying on whatever you have behind him to make those decisions.
no, he still has that decision. It's no different than on a weekend or a night, everybody's gone. He still has that responsibility to run that plant, whether it's day, night, he's, wherever he is, he has that obligation to run that plant. And he can run it. We've set up a system through Jan's SCADA system where he can check and verify and run the plant through the iPad. And so we've set up a system where he doesn't have to be in the plant looking at the gauges, looking at the controls to provide the oversight that is necessary under state regulations for a certified plant operator. So he's not at the plant all the time making every call on everything, but he has that obligation to be able to reach the plant through the SCADA system and make those changes. The system that we put in, the organizational structure that we have is really no different than the relationship that I have with Bradshaw today. And there's nothing to say that Bradshaw could retire, someone could get their become designated, and it's a written designation. Your name and contact information and email and phone number is listed at the state. Somebody else could become a 4 and become that certified plant operator, and a collection system person could assume that overall operations manager role and do the overall management and budget and administrative procedures and safety and so forth. Review time cards, all of those things that come under that obligation from that supervisor. It can be different people or it can be the same person depending upon the expertise and knowledge and assuming of roles for the organization.
Just want to say that I have no problem with Bradshaw having that job. He started in the collection system. He knows a little bit about the collection system. But somebody else down the line what I'm worried about.
You have to have the certification to be the plant operator. I say you have to have the certification to be the plant operator. And no matter where you came from, you have to get that certification.
Okay, so the next guy is gonna be a plant operator. To get care of the collection.
You could be a plant operator with a collection system background. We have one.
I don't have a problem with that. After that,
You know,
I also don't think the collection people will ever think they could ever make that. So what's the sense of it?
well, I've told them otherwise, Jack. I've told everybody here, you come in and you prove yourself and you can get any job you want here. We've written these job descriptions with responsibilities and duties. But I am a firm believer that unless the state says thou shalt not do this, anybody can do any job. Because there are a lot of bright people that can assume jobs and do a lot of things. We ought to be open to promoting an environment where you can become anything you're willing to put your nose down and get to. Absolutely. Now, it just so happens that the state says we're a class 4 treatment plant because of our size and our biological treatment. We're a class 4 plant. Therefore, you need a grade 4 treatment plant operator as your certified plant operator. State says that is gospel. Everything else, I'm wide open to people having opportunity and growing and taking on more responsibility. Absolutely. Anybody.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'd move approval of item 12, E through D, and compliment whole team both on staff and, the consultants. CPS, for putting together a really awesome set of classification descriptions.
A motion in a second. Just need a roll call, Allison.
Director Ulrich? Director Curtis? Jack, we're voting on item 12. Item 12. Yes, no? Okay, I'll wait. Director Kentosh?
That was my chance, but I'm gonna vote yes. With the acknowledgement that that's our role.
And Chair Stone?
Yes.
I do agree it was a very well done study.
Okay, moving on to item 13, proposed overtime and double time policy changes.
So to Jim, your comment, the next 3 items are individual items that came out of the Personnel Committee meeting and came out of the benefits discussion. The first one is proposed overtime and double time policies. In simple terms, we fall under FLSA, Federal Labor Standards Act, that says you get paid overtime after you've worked 40 hours in a week. That means that if you work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 hours a day, and Monday's a holiday, that's not a working hour. Therefore, you haven't hit your 40 hours. Therefore, on Saturday, you don't get paid overtime. And after some long discussions, including some review by outside benefit experts, Lieber Cassidy on the legal side, they said that we can change the designation to designate the hours that we're going to based on paid hours, not on worked hours. So if Monday's a holiday and you get paid for 8 hours a holiday on Monday, and then you work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, by the end of your shift on Friday, you've accumulated 40 hours of paid time. Therefore, when you work on Saturday, you get paid overtime. So this more aligns with what our crews are actually doing. They're working on holidays, they're working on Saturdays and Sundays. When we get into heavy rain events or disaster kind of time, they achieve overtime for the hours that they're working above and beyond 40 hours in a week. And so this allows sick time, vacation time, holiday time to all be considered paid hours for the purposes of accruing, getting to that 40-hour limit.
Yes. Any discussion?
We've been through this
Some of us have been through it.
way too many times. But I think it's a matter of equity. People achieve overtime by paid hours, not by work hours. Otherwise, you're sort of getting penalized for having holidays, or you're being penalized for being sick, or having jury duty, or whatever takes you away from the job.
I think it's a good thing to do.
Dr. Curtis?
You get paid overtime if you work over one night in a week. Still haven't got your 40 hours.
So you get paid overtime over 8 in a day. Get paid overtime when you get paid over 40 in a week. And you get paid double time once you go over 12 hours in a day. So in a 24-hour day, if you're over 8, you get overtime. If you're over 12, you get double time.
You're saying is overtime doesn't start till you've got 40 hours.
No. Or over 8 in a day.
Over 8 a day,
Yes.
whether you got the 40 hours in or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a benefit, Jack, that we didn't take something away. We actually added something. We cleaned the 40 hours paid that way instead of,
We didn't want someone to work 40 hours Monday through Friday, let's say Monday's a holiday, so they've only worked 32 hours, but they got an 8-hour holiday, then they have to come in on Saturday for a call out, and they don't get overtime because they haven't worked 40 hours yet on Christmas week. So that's why we changed. That's, in my mind, that was the deciding factor.
okay. Now, before I entertain the motion, go through the export day.
We do extra thing like for the rest of the items to kind of, that'll work.
Can we do that for the rest of the items?
Apparently, Jeff, 13, and 15 all come out of the Personnel Committee. It's my understanding at the Personnel Committee, there were disclosures made. If you made them then at the Personnel Committee, you should make them now for these items because these are flowing out of the Personnel Committee. And if you want to make a blanket statement for 13, 14, and 15, then just go ahead and do that now.
The Personnel Committee meetings were all public meetings as well.
Right. And so you need to state it on the record again here, because this is now you're taking action. At the Personnel Committee, that was only advisory. We have thought that they were making a decision, but you still were less than a quorum, and it was still an advisory committee action at that time.
Okay, now is the time for directors to share any substantial information that you may have received from sources outside of the public decision-making process, which are relevant to the decisions set forth in agenda items 13, A through D, 14, A and B, 15, A, B, and C. Director Curtis?
Yes.
Okay.
If that's a yes, can you explain?
That's for the market.
Have you had any ex parte contacts?
For the Director Stone, Curtis?
If you had contacts, you need to disclose them. You did not, then you just say no.
I have had Disclosure, yeah.
Director Curtis, could you tell us what those were?
Not as this is on the, long before that.
Then that's a no. That's for,
Dr. Ulrich? None.
none for me.
And I did have in October, November, I did have some conversation and that was noted.
Those were the conversations we had with former or current employees.
Correct.
Oh, specifically about overtime and double time? I did not have any about those topics, no.
We're taking all three of the action
And
items.
standby. I did have, okay, I should say, had email or voice communication with two employees, which I disclosed during public or during the personnel committee meetings about bereavement. Nothing more on these topics.
Yeah, and I don't specifically remember if these particular topics came into the conversation, but they could have, so go ahead.
And that's the proper thing to do, Director Stone. If, just err on the side of caution, that's all that's required.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
This is on
13.
approval of 13A through D.
Motion in a second. Allison, would you call the roll, please?
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
Director Curtis,
Yes,
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Moving on to item 14.
So this is other specific benefit discussion. This is the rate of pay, the hourly rate of pay for standby time. This is for the person works 8 hours in a day. This is the other 16 hours of the day that they're on standby. Doesn't include call outs, doesn't include, any sort of extra work, emergencies, et cetera. This is just purely standby time. Yeah, exactly. It used to be 135 an hour. In 2017. We had a class and comp study that said that we should move to 225. This review says we should move it. The average of the reviewed entities was 315, and we're recommending a rate of 325 an hour.
We approve about 14A and B. I think they got.
We already did the ex parte part.
Yes.
14.
Yes, we did.
I'll second Director Kintosh's motion.
Director Ulrich, did you have a question or no? So we have a motion in a second. Allison, would you call the roll, please?
Director Ulrich, Director Curtis, Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Quillisi,
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes.
So this is the last item, tonight's package that relates to specific benefit adjustments. This deals with vacation, sick, holiday, bereavement, and jury duty. When we did the comparables, we found that when you look at like vacation accruals, you go from 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. So you have these groupings of time in service, and you get a different accrual rate of vacation, sick, or so forth, not sick standard. And then we compared it to them and said, what's the average? So in your package, there's a change to 13 days a year instead of 11 on the 0 to 5 year for paid vacation days, for instance. Sick days stay the same. Paid holidays, we provide previously 12 holidays and 2 floating calendar days per year rather than picking. I'm sorry, it's 10 and 2. It's 10 holidays and 2 floaters. Rather than picking specific holiday days, we're going to going to 10 holidays, paid holidays, and 4 floaters to be more in line with the comparables. And then on bereavement leave, it's a little bit of a unique situation. We used to provide 2 paid working days. There was no state law governing what was provided or required to be provided. The state passed a law that said you have to provide 5 unpaid days. We're recommending that the 5 days are actually paid, not unpaid. So we're going to go from 2 paid to 5 paid. The state standard was 5 unpaid. So we're a betterment than the state, staying with the 5 days. So all of those changes are included as one action.
Jeff? Any discussion?
But where we were a little below the average of the comparables, we're bringing it up. Where we're above, we're leaving it above.
Correct. Dr. Kintosh?
I just wanted to point out that I was the odd man out. I was concerned about going from 2 days to 5 days. And I thought that, I mean, every relative that passes away is an automatic 5 days off, even if you are going to a funeral that's 5 miles away and everything's being taken care of by your sister-in-law. You don't have to do any work at all. Whereas that's contrasted with someone who might have a relative, a mother in Florida, has to fly to Florida, clean out the house, sell the house, get rid of the car, do all kinds of stuff. So there's a huge range of needs for people with that have bereavement. And I was concerned about an automatic assumption that my uncle passed away, whoever it is. I get 5 days now. But Jeff has assured me that our staff don't do that. They don't take advantage of the situation. They'll take the leave if they truly need it. And I was interested in going from 2 days to 2 days paid and 30 days up to 30 days unpaid. Because if somebody really needs to leave town and take care of the relative, they need more time than they got even the 5 days. But Jeff assures me that he will work with our staff. And if there's someone suffers a loss and has to take more than 5 days off, paid or unpaid, I'll work with the management here. We'll work with that person to make sure it can all work out. So with that, I decided to 5 days.
Dr. Anyone else have anything? Seconds.
Yeah. People paid for the 2 hour, time and a half or double time.
It's paid time. So if someone works in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they work 40 hours, and then they take Friday off for bereavement leave, they would be paid time and a half. It's the calculation for overtime doesn't go into what you were doing. It's the hours that you worked. So, you know, there are hours that you were paid. Sorry, the hours that you were paid. So, you know, if you work 48 hours in a week and 8 of them were bereavement leave, you would get paid for 8 overtime hours because you worked more than the 40 hours. So it's possible the bereavement leave could actually be paid overtime, but that's sort of the way labor law works. When you work over 40, you're getting overtime for whatever those hours are.
I'm misunderstanding. Are every one of the holidays going to be 4-day holiday?
No. The holiday, there are 10 holidays that are very typical holidays. Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, day after Thanksgiving. Those 10 days are holidays. Those are paid holidays. Those accrue on your time card as 8 hours of paid time. If you worked a holiday and the rest of the week and also a Saturday, if you accrue 48 hours in a week and one of those days was a holiday, you still get 8 hours of overtime because you're over the 40-hour time limit. Whether that was a holiday overtime or it was work overtime or whatever, when you go over 40, you're getting overtime for whatever those hours are.
The treatment plant run for 4 days is only part-time. One thing,
We would never run part-time for 4 days. Somebody's at the plant every day, 7 days a week.
go over this 4-day holiday.
Don't have a 4-day holiday. There are 4 floating holidays that you get to use at your discretion. If you want to take your birthday off, that you can use one of your floating holidays. It's not a 4-day holiday. It's 4 individual days.
There's 4 individual days.
Yes.
So you could take a Friday off,
If you
your choice.
want to take St. Patrick's Day off, but you need to do that thing, well, then you can take, we're not gonna designate it as an OVSD holiday, but if you want to take, you want to take the day after the Super Bowl off because you had a big party, well, that's a floater day and you get to use it. 4 free days, use them or lose them in accounting. 4 flex days in a,
Where they should be off. Oh. Now I understand.
flex day.
Got it?
Even with a board.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of 15A through C.
Second.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Philipse,
Yes.
Director Lorick, and Chair Stone.
Yes. Item 16.
So I just wanted to, normally we present the budget in April, at the April board meeting. I wanted to kind of back up and provide a little bit of context this year. Continue this going forward, where you actually see a budget. We'll just talk about context. Years ago, for the 95 upgrade, when our rates were $45 a month or $40 a month, there were a lot of local agencies who had rates that were actually in the teens, $18, $20, $22. And there was this perception in the industry that some agencies were high. And what we've found over the decades is that those agencies that were low were actually sort of artificially low. When we did our treatment plan upgrade in '96, we did an exhaustive financial plan that looked at the cost of the upgrade, paying down the SRF loan, the state revolving fund loan, and trying to not issue excessive bonds and all that sort of thing, sort of good financial planning. And so our rates went up a little bit, and some of the local agencies were happy to use us as comparison and say, look, OVSD is really high and we're low and we're doing a great job. And what we found, and I included an article from Santa Barbara, City of Santa Barbara, is that our rates have gone up. They've marched up in a methodical way. They haven't kept up with inflation because we've tried to keep our costs efficient. In the last 10 years or so, the CPI is 34-35% increase, and our rates are 16-17%. So we're basically half of the CPI over a decade. And we're finding that there are many other local agencies that are running into technological issues because they didn't keep up with the times.
Running out to make the 2025 standards.
Right. So Santa Paula is currently at almost $100 a month. Fillmore is way up. Amarillo, Ventura, Oxnard, and even Santa Barbara are going through multi-year rate increases, 4 or 5 years in a row at 7, 8, 9, 10% a year. Santa Barbara is going to go 4 years at 10% a year on their water and sewer rates, to the point where they're going to go from $60 where they are today, very comparable to our 58.73, I think. 58, yeah. They're comparable to us, and they're going to go to 90. So we've done a really good job of managing ourselves, but I think we have to sort of recognize that all of the inflationary pressures and some of the individual pressures are going to put a strain on our revenue. I think when we do the budget, I think we're going to see some recommendations to potentially, consider a rate increase this year. on where we are. Won't be excessive. I'm not proposing, think about 4 years at 10% like other agencies. That's not responsible. But I think we have to recognize that the chemicals are up, lab costs are up. Some of our other costs that are running these more complex systems are pushing us up to the point where we may need to consider rate increases as a revenue enhancement. So I think I'm going to end up there with this budget. It's a 1-year budget. It's not a 4-year in a row, but the pressures are there, and I think we'll continue to keep our eyes on it. It's going to be hard to do.
3 years in a row with no rate increase would be difficult.
Curtis?
Question. Can we get some information? Well, first off, how much are you looking for?
I haven't put the number to it. I'm not going into this saying it's going to be X. We do a zero-based budget every year. So what we do is we don't take our tire budget and just increase it by 5%, for next year. We don't do that. We look at, do our vehicles need tires, and what is the price of tires? And go at it and say, we need tires for 5 vehicles, and here's the price of the vehicles that need tires, and here's what we're asking for in terms of a budget. So we're very in-depth. Bradshaw and the team and Allison are crunching numbers on every line item in the budget. And so in April, we'll come to you and say, hey, here's every line item crunched on a zero-based starting over every year. And then we'll take a look at where that puts us revenue-wise.
Can we get a list of percentages to the amount?
Yes. Yes. In rough terms, 1%, we have about a $10 million a year budget. So a 1% rate increase is $100,000 in revenue in ballpark figures. So together the budget, and then we'll come with some choices. My guess it's in the 3 to 5% range. But that's doing estimates. But I at least want to start the conversation in saying that why we're doing this and include information that's pushing us that way. And we've been able to hold it for 2 years during heavy inflationary years, but our more complex years ago, we didn't have sensors that calculated nitrates and dissolved oxygen and everything. Now we do. Those require maintenance because our system has gotten more exact and more precise. And so chemicals are up, our sensors are up, some of our SCADA control systems are up. It's just getting challenging to hold costs down without at least being aware of what's going on around us.
Plus salaries continue to go up with COLA, if nothing else.
Wages have gone up for some of our service providers, so their costs have gone up.
On 2 years without a rate increase.
Dr. Kintosh?
You say you're doing a 1-year budget, which I like, and you're doing a 1-year budget. Are you going to look at some major CIPs that are coming down to make sure that might tell us to bump it up a little bit or down a little bit?
So we have a CIP and we also program out our cash expenditures based on that CIP, and we roll that into, what we do is we take from our general fund and we put it into our reserve funds to plan for those CIP projects. And so we keep an eye on that CIP as because that's the pull off those reserve funds. I mean, if there's any questions, I do not see us chasing the other agencies that are pushing 4 years, 10% a year in a row. That the data does not support that for us. We're not headed from $58 to $90. We're not. But I think we need to be mindful of revenue demands and at least be aware of it.
So are we going to sit down and have some kind of workshop and get this put together?
Yes.
Instead of trying to cram it into a regular meeting?
Well, we'll do the presentation at a regular meeting. 2 days later, we'll have a full workshop. Jack, I saw you waving your pen at me.
Are you gonna plan this for 5 years, 3 years?
We're doing a 1-year budget, one at a time.
You have
CIP,
to do a 218 every year then.
yes, and that is a downside of it. I think my experience in dealing with the board and the history of the board is there was a desire to sort of not put in place one of these 5-year rate increases and do a 218 vote now that covers 5 years, but rather be more mindful of a year-by-year basis. And if it means we have to do a 218 vote every year, at least we're being more cognizant of what we're doing rather than just guessing now what we're going to need in 5 years and saying, let's just do, 5 years of 7%. I think Camarillo's doing 5 years of 7 or 8%. Santa Barbara's doing 4 years of 10. And that just gets baked into 218 vote. I don't see that being a good approach to plan 4 years from now. We're going to need 10% in a year. I'd rather do it even if it's a hassle. But that's up for board discussion if you would like to plan out, something.
I think things are economically too volatile to go 3 or 4 years out.
Because it makes you hedge too much.
Okay, that sounds good. This is just
Advisory. If you have questions, please shoot them to me. But we're well underway on budget preparations. It takes a good solid 2 months worth of work to get to April's presentation.
All right, I think we'll move item 17. Do it after we do 18 through 23 first, and then come back to 17. That'll be the informational items. Anybody wants to pull anything off for any of that?
No question.
Committee reports, I guess everybody kind of sees what the personnel committee's through, so.
Think of each other.
Randy did the CASA report on the last meeting, so.
Good.
Items of interest or correspondence, do you have anything? Okay, that'll be receive and file. And now we will move on to closed session, item 17. Take a few minutes to let the room clear.
Let me make a statement on the record.
Yes, sir, please.
And, item number 17, closed session conference with legal counsel on existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 subdivision D. The name of the case is Christy Price and Ian McDonald versus the Ojai Valley Sanitary District, Ventura County Superior Court, case number 2024 PUW020953 in non-essential personnel as to the room. And if you could leave the WebEx on so that Misha can participate, but turn off any recording.
Right, yeah. So we're good?
You,
Stop the recording here?
Jan. You can go back on the record. There's nothing to report.
To report, okay.
Even though we voted.
Nothing to report because we haven't, your vote doesn't finalize anything in regards to the litigation.
Orders on them. Okay, we're coming back into a closed session with nothing to report. In open session at 8:07. So move on to item 24, board member, general manager comments.
I have nothing to add.
Anything from- Okay, with that, we're adjourned at 8:07.